Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting 392 Edith Cavell Boulevard, Port Stanley. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? To the clerk, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Mayor Sloan, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land on Friday, December the 16th, 2022. Notice was posted to the property by municipal staff as well as the municipal website, and notice was also displayed in the weekly CBuzz newspaper advertisements.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, our planner, I would invite you to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. As has been indicated, that this is a public meeting to outline the draft amendment that's been submitted by the applicant for 392 Edith Cavell Boulevard. As can be seen on the screen, the location of the subject lands are on the south side of Edith Cavell Boulevard, just southeast of Stanley Park Drive. To the south of that is Lake Erie. So the purpose of the amendment is the applicants are looking to demolish the existing residential or cottage on the property in order to construct a new permanent residential home. As part of that process, they're looking to get relief from the side yard setbacks. This is consistent with what's been done in the past along Edith Cavell, given the long, narrow nature of the properties along that stretch of the road. Just to note, there is a portion on the southern, half of the property that is zone dynamic beach standard. Nothing is going to be changed to that zone, and those regulations would remain intact. So this brings us to the amendment itself. Part 1 of the amendment introduces a new schedule to the bylaw, being Part 1BG. That introduces essentially what is the implementing body to allow for the designation that's in Section 2. So on Schedule A, it designates the property, specifically the lands that are that open space zone currently, and introduces a site specific exception as to the R1-91 zone. So as can be seen on here, this is map part 2BG that was introduced through Part 1, and the highlighted area zoned as R1-91. Part 3 of the amendment introduces a new subsection to the Port Stanley bylaw, being subsection 9.2.2.91, defines the area shown on that zoning map part as 91 R1-91, and then provides a site-specific exception to the side yards being 1 meter, and then introduces that exception to the general provisions in the bylaw through that third point. Then as part of what's normally done through the process to address the eventual consolidation, or we're going to be going through the process of updating the bylaw, it introduced a Schedule B to the amendment, being zoning map part 1, that has all of the amendments that have occurred to date on that bylaw schedule, including the ones that are made through this process, which can be seen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Wilson, have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Mayor Sloan, no correspondence has been received.
Before opening the meeting to questions from the public, please be advised of the following. If you're attending in person, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record before asking your question. If you're listening on your computer, tablet or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. At this time, I ask that all participants be respectful to members of council as you ask your questions. Those choosing to be less than respectful will be removed from the building. Is there any member of the public in attendance sitting in the gallery that wishes to speak? Okay. Now, and Susie as well. Now I would ask Susie, pardon me. Okay, I was just not sure of this is one of our first ones. So if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Roman Kuchmak. I live at 394 Edith Cavell Boulevard. I've lived there for 40 years. I have two brief points. Number one is there's a fence in existence between the two properties of 392 and 394. I have a submission showing the fence to be wholly on the property of 394 Edith Cavell Boulevard. I wish that this fence not be subject to the tear down and protected during the construction that's to take place at 392 Edith Cavell Boulevard. Excuse me. Second item is drainage and stormwater. The Ontario Building Code states as follows in section 9.14 points. Located on a building site graded so that the water shall not accumulate at or near the building and will not adversely affect adjacent properties. There's a 32-inch height differential between 394 and 392. I have a photograph of the height differential and a survey showing the relative heights. The survey is unfortunately from 2004. So it is out of date, but it still shows a differential of close to 20 centimeters, or sorry, 40 centimeters. I still got it wrong. I'm going to switch to inches. It shows a difference of approximately 2 feet. This differential extends for 62 feet and will be between the homes when the new home is built. Currently, when it rains water, sand washes down from that small slope between the two homes and covers the sidewalk and goes into the entrances to my crawl space underneath the cottage. This is only a very small height differential, but nonetheless, the sand does wash off this area and down into it, carried by the water that hits the slope. This is going to increase substantially when there is a 65-foot long house with a 20-foot wall facing that property, that slope. So the rain and sand will increase substantially, and the sand will wash down into this, and this has to be removed by hand. This problem would not exist if the house was built on piers. If it's built on a platform, there's no place for the water to run other than onto my property. And this defeats the point of the building code. End of my submission. I have the forms here for to be submitted.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate you coming. I just personally looked at your lot. So you have a new home to the east of you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have a new home to the east of your property, sir?
It is, there's a new home to the east of my property, which is at 390.
Thank you. I just took a look at it online. I wanted to get clarification of exactly where you are. Your house is near the road. Does it go all the way? Does your lot go all the way to the beach?
My house is not near the road. My house sits actually quite a ways back from the road. The property at 292 is abuts the road.
I see. Thanks for the clarification. For your two questions, I think it was, well, I pass that to Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I mean, I'm not too sure if Mr. Perrin would like to speak to some of the drainage concerns. This was something that was addressed and looked at through the consultation and review process by both KCCA and staff. Those matters with respect to drainage lot grading would need to be addressed at the time of the building permit. But ultimately, the construction of the proposed foundation and the floodproofing measures were reviewed by KCCA and deemed to be satisfied to address that. The other matters that were brought forward, I believe Mr. Perrin may have some more information on that.
Mr. Perrin.
So outside of the plan approval, municipality does. Outside of the planning approval that's being sought at the time of building permit, all new development in Central Elgin requires a lot grading plan. That lot grading plan first and foremost shows the grades of the existing ground around it and existing drainage patterns. It then goes into detail with respect to the actual buildings and structures that are being constructed, and then shows how that lot will be graded so it doesn't adversely affect adjacent properties after the development. On top of that, within this area, in the beach area, as you can appreciate, storm outlets are not great, just given the difference in elevation between the lake level as well as the ground. So what we do require is that on a lot by lot basis on new development, that surface water gets infiltrated into the ground and into the sand. So I did have the opportunity to speak to Mr. Kuchmak last week and assured him that all the eaves troughs and downspouts off the new house would be taken to a infiltration gallery on the property. And then, so that'll deal with the impervious areas. And then the surface on the property lines would be swaled to an outlet. Mr. Kuchmak mentioned it in his submission that it is all sand and it does tend to run. And as you can appreciate, it's not like a sodded area. So with wind, sand does move around. So at the time of the building permit application, staff will ensure that there is grading that will accommodate the drainage pattern. They will have to certify that grading has been completed at the completion of the building. But after that, it would be incumbent on the landowner to make sure that that stays in place. But at that point, the municipality doesn't have any authority to go in and change the grade.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that wishes to speak on this here in the gallery? Now I'll ask Susie Cardoso if there is any member of the public attending by Zoom that wishes to speak. If so, I would ask that you raise your hand and you'll be admitted to the meeting.
Mayor Sloan, there are no attendees via Zoom wishing to speak.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
None.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does any member of the council have any questions? Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. What is our standard procedure when there are issues like fences nearby? Do we typically have a requirement that if it's taken down, a new one be put up to replace it? Or is that something we leave to the owners?
Mr. Perrin.
Well, if the municipality doesn't control the removal of a fence. My understanding is that the fence is actually located on Mr. Kuchmak's property. So that would be up to to make sure that that fence stays up between Mr. Kuchmak and the adjacent landowner. The demolition permit would only be issued for the structure under the Building Code Act.
Councillors, any other questions? Seeing none, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those in attendance wishing further information can sign the hearing attendance sheet located on the podium. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future council meeting. Thank you. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make presentation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting 191 Carlow Road, Port Stanley. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, may I ask the clerk, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Mayor Sloan, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land on Friday, December the 16th, 2022. Notice was posted to the property by municipal staff as well as the municipal website, and notice was also displayed in the weekly Sea Buzz newspaper advertisements.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, the planner, I would ask to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. As has been indicated, this is a public meeting to present the draft bylaw for 191 Carlow Road. As some may be aware, this property was subject to a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment back in 2019 when the municipality was looking to, increase the, opportunity for investment in the property, municipally known kind of as the DOC building, Dominion of Canada building in the port. So as part of that, I guess I'll bring it up on here. There were a number of uses that were brought forward and changed for the property. This is really a technical amendment to deal with, a agreement purchase and sale or lease agreement that's municipalities in with an individual to allow for some investment and development on the parcel of land. In order to allow for that, the configuration shown on the screen right now needs to be, put in place. Prior to that, it was really just more or less the extent of the building itself. So ultimately what this amendment is doing through the bylaw, which is here part 1, it's repealing the special map part BY of the Port Stanley bylaw, and in introducing a new schedule that's introduced through Schedule A of this amendment, being a new part 1 BY. That's shown on here on the screen right now. So the general provisions, everything that was applied to the lands previously still remain intact, but now this is reflective of the agreement that the municipality has in place. So this then brings forward again the previous amendment we heard today, part 2 of the amendment, which is a consolidated version of the map part schedule. So being zoning map 1. Which is on the screen here, which includes the amended designation on the property, as well as all of the other site-specific amendments that have occurred to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Wilson, have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Mayor Sloan, no correspondence has been received.
Before opening the meeting to questions from the public, please be advised of the following. If you're attending in person, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record before asking your question. If you are listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. Please, and if you phoned in on a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address. Is there any member of the public in attendance sitting in the gallery that wishes to speak to this? Now I'll ask Susie Cardoso, is there any member of the public attending by Zoom that wishes to speak?
Mayor Sloan, there are no attendees via Zoom wishing to speak.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions? Does any member of the public have any further questions? Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org. Those in attendance wishing further information can sign the hearing attendance sheet located on the podium. Those who do not have access to a computer should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860 extension 286. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. Ladies and gentlemen, just to inform you, we have to take a 10 minutes right now because of the allotted time starting at 6:10. So we will start precisely at 6:10 for the next issue on the agenda. Thank you. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, an official plan amendment respecting 410 Sunset Drive, St. Thomas. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting, please?
Mayor Sloan, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land on Friday, December the 16th, 2022. Notice was posted to the property by municipal staff as well as the municipal website, and notice was also displayed in the weekly CE Buzz newspaper advertisements.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Now it's for Kevin McClure, the planner, to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment. Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. As has been indicated, this is the public meeting to present the draft official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. Of note, I know the applicant is in attendance today and their agent is in the attendance today. There were additional materials submitted after the notice was circulated that is proposing a revision to the application. However, as the circulation has gone forward, what's being presented is what was submitted as part of the original application materials. The applicant will have an opportunity at some point to address some of the other concerns or what their other proposals are, and staff would be happy to answer any questions with respect to that. So as is indicated, so this is the presentation to indicate or provide the draft official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for Sunset Drive. The location of the property is shown on the screen, being west of Sunset Drive, north of Karen Street, and where we are today. The purpose of the amendment is to allow for the development of 177 residential units, and this is to occur over 2 phases. At least initially, this is what has been submitted to the municipality. Phase 1 being a 4-story apartment building with 105 units. Phase 2 being a 6-story apartment building with 72 units. Interim permitted uses are the medical dental uses within the existing building on the property. So that's the location of the existing structure on the screen now, and that would be removed as part of Phase 2 construction. So this is, again, a preliminary concept that was provided by the applicant as part of this application, showing Phase 1 of the proposed phase 1 of the building, being that 109 units with the 2-story office building and associated parking to the north of that, or to the left of the screen. And then the overall development scheme shown with the two apartment buildings being the 4 along Karen, and again, northern being that 6-story apartment. So to facilitate this right now, the lands are designated office professional in the official plan. The proposed high density use is in the medical office dental uses wouldn't fit within the provisions of the designation. So what's been presented or will be presented is a site specific exemption to those office professional designation. So that brings us to the details of the amendment itself. Item 1, again, being introducing a Schedule I to the official plan amendment, and closing the area and heavy solid lines on that is Schedule E, which is the Community of Norman Lindale Land Use Plan, and outlining that there's a provision for site-specific exceptions to the office professional use. So that's shown on here, being Schedule E to the Norman Lindale Land Use Plan that is part of the official plan, and then identifies that area that would be subject to the site-specific exception. Then this brings into the item 2 to the amendment, being the site-specific policy exception, and it again identifies those lands specifically being requested through this process, and indicates that there may include high density residential uses, including apartment buildings with a maximum maximum height of 6 stories, and medical office uses in addition to the other permitted uses that are within the office professional designation. And then to facilitate the actual development, which we require through site plan approval as well, would be the zoning on the property. So right now it's subject to an open space zone in the Township of Yarmouth bylaw. This would be then rezoning those lands to a site specific residential R1-88 zone to permit the proposal. Of note, in the planning justification report. The concept plan that was provided did provide us a site, I guess, site-specific sort of setbacks. The staff had advanced a proposal or just draft amendment that would be more reflective of what was indicated in the concept plan, and to ensure that should this application go forward, that it would respect those setbacks. However, as part of that justification report and further through confirmation from the applicant, they're requesting that the proposed regulations, I guess in the middle column, be advanced, which allows for more, flexibility in what can occur on the site, subject to, site plan control, et cetera. But ultimately, it does provide quite a bit more flexibility than what's provided in the concept plan. So this is going to be a presentation just to show exactly what's been requested as by the applicant through this process. So part one of the amendment is introducing a Schedule A to the zoning bylaw amendment, being a map part 6.0. And then part two of the amendment in Schedule A designates the area highlighted in heavy solid lines as that R1-88. So as can be seen here, this would be the area, just to the north of us. Then part three of the amendment introduces a new subsection to the Township of Yarmouth bylaw, being subsection 9.2.2.88, identifies that or defines that area shown on that map part as R1-88, provides that the only permitted uses are the residential use, clinic use, accessory uses. And the reason why we put the clinic use in there is that the medical office professional would fall within the clinic definition within the Yarmouth bylaw. The next section is that the only permitted buildings and structures are apartment buildings, medical office, dental office, and accessory buildings and structures. The minimum lot area would be 1,000 square meters. Minimum lot frontage being 30 meters. And for purposes of this, the frontage would be onto Karen, or considered on Karen. Minimum lot depth being 150 meters, maximum lot coverage being 35%. Minimum lot setback, front yard setback, being 15 meters. Minimum side yard setback being the interior, being 10 meters, and exterior 6 meters. So again, that exterior would be along Sunset. And then a minimum rear yard setback being 10 meters. Height 6 stories for buildings and structures permitted in subsection, the previous subsection. So again, that goes back to the residential uses and office commercial uses. 5.5 meters for accessory buildings and structures. Off-street parking, they're requiring or requesting a reduction from the general provisions of the parking standard in the Yarmouth bylaw, and their request is 1.25 spaces per residential unit, and then providing that 1 space per 36 square meters of gross office floor area is provided for the the interim office medical use. Minimum landscape open space as 40%, density being 100 units per hectare maximum. And then the exceptions outlined here, essentially all of the exceptions, all of the provisions generally within the bylaw are slightly altered. Then part 4 of the amendment, as part of the eventual consolidation, again, as we've seen in other amendments, introduced Schedule B to this bylaw amendment, being a consolidated version of the zoning map 6, which includes this amendment, including all of the other amendments that have occurred to date on that map part, which can be seen on the screen here, which again identifies that R1-88 zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Ms. Wilson, have you received any written submissions on the proposal, please?
Mayor Sloan, the following correspondence has been received. A petition from the neighborhood, which has been circulated to council and staff opposing the amendment. Correspondence from Wayne Duncan and Heidi Holster, 24 Marlene Street, voicing concerns with increased traffic, light pollution, noise pollution, security of neighborhood, traffic infrastructure insufficient, and property well water. They are opposed to the high density residential use and level of stories. Herman Cohonwiski, 353 Sunset Drive, indicates there appears to be no need for more residential housing land as per the planning report dated December the 12th, 2022. He strongly opposes the proposed development. George and Rebecca Capogionis, 351 Sunset Drive, indicate area is hardly built up in a manner that is suitable to support high-density housing and concerned with the lack of infrastructure currently in place to support the proposed high-density development. They respectfully request council deny the amendment. Tina Rohamwowski, 353 Sunset Drive, concerns with increased traffic and no amenities to support high-density residential. She asks council to deny the amendment. Letter of support from the Family and Children's Services of St. Thomas, as the project being proposed provides the type of housing needed, multi-unit rentals with a component of affordable housing included. Richard Gruner, email correspondence suggesting this is a good fit for this large piece of underutilized land. Email correspondence received from Christine Wenzel, 26 North Valerie Street, stating she is not in support of land changing to residential. Barb Murray, 25 Marlene Street, voicing concern with noise, traffic flow, daylight sunrise views. She is opposed to the amendment. Chris Murray, 25 Marlene Street, voicing concern with no bus route to 410 Sunset, additional traffic, increased medical calls to the proposed site, and the effect the proposal will have on property values. All of said correspondence has been circulated to council and staff.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. First of all, does everyone have room to hear going forward? I know there's some, if you want to. 1 second, please. We'll have to speak a little louder for you folks, because let me just start by saying it's so important to have this public meeting. This council's new, as you all well know, but the advocacy from any group and giving them the opportunity and you the opportunity to come here, I think is far more important than us seeing you on a screen. I'm not being detrimental to those that are on the screen, but I'm glad that you're here and have taken the time to come and speak with us. As you know, and before opening the meeting to questions, and I'm sure there'll be some, please be advised of the following. If you're attending here, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And those that are listening on the computer, I go to after. So I think what I'd like to do now is ask the group that are here, is there anyone in the public that in the gallery that wishes to speak? Thank you. If you could come forward, sir, stating your name for the council and those present.
Good evening, council. My name is Matt Campbell. I'm a partner with the land use planning firm Zelenka Priamo. We have a presentation that we'd like to go through for council. Kevin, is that the clicker? Thank you. And Mayor Sloan, just to expand on what you said about not being able to hear, if anyone can't hear anything that I'm saying, please let me know. I'm happy to speak as loud as I can. And what we want to do tonight is ensure that everyone has accurate information so that council can make an informed decision on this application, and that we're providing accurate information for anyone who is attending this evening or is viewing online. So again, my name is Matt Campbell. I'm with Zelenka Priamo. We have the applicant, Quincy Developments. We have Jeff Bibbings here to join us as well. So I'm going to provide some commentary, and then Jeff is going to speak to some of the nuances with this particular development, with particular regard to who these units are going to be marketed to, market affordability, and how this building can fit into the residential land supply and housing marketplace of the area. So I think Mr. McClure did an excellent job of overviewing this proposed development, so I'm not going to rehash too much of that. Off the hop though here, I would like to just address some administrative items with regards to the official plan amendment and how it has changed over the course of this application. So we submitted this application back in August, and due to the election, we were unable to bring it forward to this meeting until now, which is regrettable because it's kind of been looming over everyone's head for so long. But nonetheless, we're here and we can talk about it, which is great. Mr. McClure provided a staff report in December, and in that staff report, there were concerns about the residential land supply in Central Elgin. Now, subsequent to that staff report, we provided a solution to council. Now, this is not part of our application, but this is a further amendment that the municipality could undertake to 100% satisfy these issues of residential land supply. And specifically what that is essentially a land swap. So Central Elgin undertook an official plan update recently. And as part of that update, there was the conclusion that the municipality has sufficient residential land for the planning horizon. Now, what that review did not take into account was one specific piece of property in Port Stanley. And that property is identified in our revised planning justification report. And we talk all about it. The consequence of this property, though, is that it will never be developed for residential purposes. The reasons why is that it is entirely landlocked, so there's no vehicular access to it. You can't actually access this property. It is bounded on 3 sides by water courses and significant valleys, and it's covered in a forest. So, I've been doing development work for 13 years. I've never seen a property like this ever been developed. No one's attempted to develop it. And furthermore, this property was previously owned by a developer and then conveyed this property to the municipality. So it's under the municipality's ownership right now. I can almost guarantee you no one's going to come and try and develop it. But yet this property is designated residential. It's contributing almost 5 hectares to the residential land supply of the municipality. So we have an imbalance here. We have our site right here that we're talking about this evening, that's 1.8 hectares. Yet the municipality has undevelopable lands that, in my opinion, are erroneously designated. And what I'm suggesting to council is that you bring forward a municipally initiated official plan amendment to redesignate those lands. And there's already supporting studies done to that effect. So not much in the way of legwork would be required to redesignate these lands, redesignate them to the natural heritage designation. This would result in actually a net decrease of the residential land supply in Central Elgin. So while there are concerns about the residential land supply, in my opinion, it's really a red herring. This is easily solvable. And then we can focus on the merits of this actual application and get into the bones of that. So I'm going to reiterate this at the end of my comments, but what I would ask council to do, and perhaps Mr. Shipway can advise council on the mechanics of how to do this, would be to direct staff to prepare bylaws to the effect that I just spoke to for the next council meeting. So council would have that in front of them and would be able to make a decision on it, as well as pass a resolution that the changes to the application are technical in nature and don't require an additional circulation period. And let me be clear, the changes to this application are nothing from when the original application was made. There literally are no changes, except for one change, which is the addition of truly affordable housing units, which we're very happy that we can bring that as part of our application. So why don't I get into that? The development itself, as Mr. McClure mentioned, 2 phases. The first phase being a 4-story, 105-unit building, L-shaped building located towards the corner. Now, urban design practice tells us to locate the building as close to the streets as we can. In this case, we can't physically do that because we have underground infrastructure that we have to stay away from. So we've located the building as far away from any existing residential use as possible while maintaining sufficient setbacks for amenity space that's located right next to the building and parking. So you'll see on the plan, I think there was the comment from one of the members of the public about amenities in the area. Well, that's true. There isn't a whole lot of walkability in the area. We're compensating for that by providing those amenities right on site. And you can see that in phase 2 of the development, we have a very large, centrally located courtyard. So anyone who's looking for outdoor space, there's ample outdoor space provided on this property. These buildings are to accommodate 1 and 2 bedroom market rate units. And again, one of the aspects of this development is that Mr. Bibbings here has agreed to provide 5 affordable housing units. Now, when I say affordable housing, I don't mean, it's market rate, it's a little bit less than that. No, these are units that will be priced below average market rate. And we can get into the details of what specifically that is, but in general, it's there is an average market rate for all 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom units and bachelor units across the market area. CMHC provides those figures, I believe, on a quarterly or yearly basis. And then we're proposing rents for these 5 units at 85% of that for a period of 25 years. So these are truly affordable units that are going to go a long way to address housing affordability. Now, what this building is not, this is not an affordable housing building. The vast majority of the units in this building are purpose-built market rate rental units. So that's going to respond to what we see in our community every day. We have a housing crisis. And the reality of the situation is that we have retirees and young professionals, and we're experiencing this in our own firm. We have young professionals who are choosing to live at home because they can't afford nor even find a place to live. So, and I think Mr. Bibbings is going to speak more to that effect later on, but that's really what we're trying to achieve here. This is some isometric views of the building itself. And one of the interesting things about the actual construction of the building is that the developer is looking to source building materials from a company called Element 5, one of the recently, or their business in St. Thomas that provides structural timber for buildings. And that's what we're looking to incorporate into this building here. One thing that Mr. McClure touched on that should be, very evident and known for this conversation is that this meeting here, this is not the end of the story, and council will make a decision on this application, hopefully at the next meeting. But everyone in this room should be aware that there's another step in the process, and that's called site plan approval. So if there are concerns about certain elements of the site, say lighting, grading, drainage, where parking is located, those kinds of matters, those can be addressed through the site plan approval process. So what we're really talking about tonight is the principle of use. Are we going to permit an apartment building at this location? And Mr. McClure has identified the zoning regulations that we're looking at, but those other matters, sidewalks, parking spaces, the design of the building itself, that will be deferred to a later date through the site plan approval process. Now, I think we're going to have a really long discussion here tonight, and hopefully it's a fruitful and respectful one. The reality of this situation is that we have woefully underutilized lands. These are prime development lands on a major arterial road that have sat vacant for years and years and years and years. Their previous or the current plan function under the office professional designation, that hasn't come to fruition. And I think the previous council made a decision for 400 Sunset, just up the street, to add additional commercial uses to that site. That's the Elgin Harvest Pizza. And if you haven't tried it, it's fantastic, it's wonderful. And that's a really nice adaptive reuse. And that required an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. And that is a successful example of looking at the policies and say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't responding to our current land marketplace. And the previous council took an active step and agreed to look at different uses. We're doing the same thing here. We have a land use designation that is not reflective of what the ultimate use of this property potentially could be. And in reality, there's no demand for office professional uses on a permanent basis along this corridor. So some of the concerns that we heard and were forwarded to us through public correspondence was the residential land supply. And we can certainly speak more to that effect, but I think the bottom line for that is that's an easily solvable situation. The original application that we made suggested, or rather requested, a special policy to the office professional designation to essentially get around this land supply issue. When we looked at the staff report, we thought, okay, well we can deal with this. And that's why we have this suggestion with the land swap. Now, again, to be clear, I'm not sure if I mentioned it deliberately. What we're the new official plan amendment or the revised one that we're asking for is actually a redesignation of land with a special policy. So instead of remaining in the office professional designation, we're asking that to be redesignated to residential with a special policy to permit the 6-story apartment buildings as well as the medical dental as an interim use. Traffic, that was one that we saw quite a lot of commentary on in the public comments. There was a traffic and parking utilization study that was done for this site. What that actually recommended was under background conditions. So background means without this development at all, over the study horizon, a northbound left turn lane was recommended to be installed in Sunset. So whether this development happens or not, that's what this the report concluded. Now, with that northbound left turn lane, the report also concludes that this development can operate with satisfactory levels of service, and that's a technical term that traffic engineers use to deal with, queuing at intersections and making sure that people aren't waiting too long to turn left or turn right, that sort of thing, and that all turning movements can operate at a satisfactory level of service. As well, the parking supply was analyzed and there's sufficient parking for the site. Now, as Mr. McClure mentioned, we were proposing a parking rate of 1.25 spaces per residential unit, and that is well in line with other municipalities' parking rates for apartment uses. And if you look at other more major municipalities or urbanized municipalities such as London, they're dropping their parking rates significantly for high density residential uses, well below what we're proposing here. There was the commentary regarding safety, and now I'm not quite exactly sure in what respect the safety is going to be of an issue. In terms of traffic safety, again, we have the traffic report that demonstrates that there's sufficient traffic movements and sight lines. So safety from a traffic perspective is not an issue. If there's safety concerns with other aspects, we can certainly have that discussion. As well as light. So again, I mentioned that this development will still have to go through the site plan approval process. As part of that process, we'll be required to submit what's called a photometrics plan and lighting plan. And that plan will specify where light is falling on the site. And perhaps Mr. Perrin or Mr. McClure can confirm that the municipality has requirements that we cannot cast any light off site. And maybe after I'm done my comments, they could do so. There was a comment regarding concerns about groundwater. Now, what I can tell everyone in this meeting is that this development is proposed to be serviced by full municipal services, and it's to be a slab on grade construction, which means that we're not providing a basement in the building. There's no significant excavation or anything that would go anywhere down into the ground. There would be frost footings, which would be standard practice for a building of this nature, as any slab on grade building, but nothing that's really going down into the ground. So the water supply for this building is going to be from the municipal water supply system. It's not a well, and sanitary is going to be provided by municipal sanitary sewers, not a septic system. So I'm challenged to see how this would detrimentally impact any sort of groundwater issues in the area. But again, we can have that conversation as the evening goes on. Affordability was one of the comments as well. And as I mentioned, as Mr. Bibbings is going to say as well, these are market rate units that are responding to the current housing crisis that we have. And one of the things that I'm reminded of is fundamental economics. So if we can increase the supply of market rate residential units, well, that will likely have the effect of slowing the rental rate increase, or could perhaps even reduce it for our market area, which I think would be great news for everybody. There was also the comment about the location of this site. Again, I mentioned this is a woefully underutilized piece of property. It has excellent connectivity. There was a comment about transit, how there isn't transit here. Well, I think you just saw Mayor Preston just this week make comments about expanding the St. Thomas transit service, including connections with London. Well, perhaps if there's a sufficient ridership availability in this area, perhaps transit could be extended to this area. Those are my comments at this time. I'm happy to respond to any other comments that council or any member of the public may have. And at this time, I'll invite Jeff to come up and say a few words about the site.
Thank you, council, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you and all of you who are attending. I did read everything that you submitted, and I'm sensitive to what you're saying. I think Matt alluded to the housing crisis, and it's not just St. Thomas and Central Elgin, it's every place in Ontario. Affordability is a real issue. Young people can't afford houses. That's just a fact. Interest rates went up again today as well, which obviously didn't help. You may or may not know, but this area has one of the lowest vacancy rates in the entire province. It's less than 1%. What brought me to this community was I was trying to build a medical building, which I'm still working on, by the way, because you also have a shortage of doctors, which I'm sure you all know. But one of the things that I heard repeatedly from people that I met with is, in addition to a need for physicians, there's a need for staff. There's a need for employees. There's a lot of companies in this area who are starved for qualified people. These young people who might want to come here can't come because there's no place for them to live. That's exactly what we're targeting with this project. Retirees who've sold their homes locally and don't want to leave the community, but are forced to because there's nothing for them to rent. And young people who might choose to come here, but don't have the option because there's no place for them to live. As Matt said, this is not an affordable housing project. That's really reserved for the nonprofits and the government at this stage because it's very expensive to build. This is a market rate apartment building. That's what we're proposing. It's going to address, I think, the needs of the community and the demand that's clearly here. With a 1% vacancy rate, as I said, there's no place to go. And when you look at what's available in the marketplace, even the stuff that's not great is incredibly expensive. Your rents in St. Thomas are as high and higher in some respects than London is. So when a young person has the opportunity to take a job, if they have to commute from London to St. Thomas, that's a major strike against them coming here. And that's, again, something that I heard time and time again. In terms of the residential lands that are available for development in Central Elgin, it's true, there is a lot. But the issue is none of it is serviced. Very little of it is serviced, and it won't be serviced for the foreseeable future. The beauty of this site is the services are right at the road. This project, this site is shovel ready. With your support and with your approval, we can get going on this fairly quickly and address a need that's obvious. So I think some of you have, I know some of you looked at my LinkedIn account because we all know there's no secrets. I think you've seen what I've done in other communities with my medical buildings. I don't build low end. Everything that we build is aesthetically attractive. In fact, two of my partners in this are architects who are very sensitive to the aesthetic. So, without taking up any more time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I think it's a great project. And I think it's something that this community would benefit by.
Thank you both for your time. May I ask if there's anyone else who wishes to come forward, please? Welcome.
My address is 42291 John Wise Line.
Thank you.
I've lived there for 37 years. This is not the first time that I have attended your office because of the overflow of water.
Sorry, the clerk is just mentioning we didn't get your name. I apologize.
Linda Klein.
Thank you.
C-L-I-N-E.
Thank you, Ms. Klein.
And I paid my taxes.
Well, that's
Anyway.
one of us.
I was here within the last 20 years when the two buildings went up, the payment office and the museum. And where I live, there's a ravine that runs right between my property and my neighbor's property. I've lived there now, I think I moved there in 85. So it's well over 30 years I've lived there. And up until those buildings went up, the drainage was tolerable. The drain needed to be cleaned. But other than that, we had a few floods here and there, but nothing to write home about. When those two buildings went in, it was like a river running through it. I had to come here, and because of that conversation, the property between the museum and the payment office is now a floodplain. Do you understand what I'm saying? So consequently, you're going to put these 100 and some odd what building, unit apartment building in there. And I don't think you realize the amount of traffic that Sunset Drive carries. In the summer, it's astronomical. That is because that light was put in there because of so many accidents. I just think it's a bad space to put an apartment building. How many cars are going to be coming out there? Will there be a traffic light? And they're going to have one traffic light after another. I don't understand who thought this idea up, but it's crazy, bloody crazy. And as far as the utilities, where does this municipal drain and what municipal water come from? Are they sustainable for a building of that size? You know, I live on a 0.4 of an acre property and I have a well, but I have to tell you, I have a Trojan light. I have a filter system, or otherwise I couldn't drink the water. So what is the municipal water clean? And to put that building on top of a major highway, so close, and the summer, you guys work here, you know the traffic that goes back and forth. You can't get out of your laneway sometimes. Thank you for listening. This was a nervous experience for me, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next presenter, please. Welcome. If you could state your name, sir.
Hi, Jamie Kovacs. I live over at 7 North Valerie Street. I'd like to thank Mayor Sloan and the council for letting us in tonight. I'm very impressed. I had the pleasure of bringing that petition around with a few other people and got to know our neighbors even more so than we did before. I wasn't going to say something at the beginning, but I will now. We reached out to a counselor and we had that counselor come to our house to meet a group of concerned neighbors over this development. We brought our concerns up. All very word ranges age from 80 down to 30. Our counselor, however, offered no options about fighting this. There was no mention about a December 12th meeting. There was no mention about a report submitted on the 12th. I asked that counselor, why wasn't this mentioned in our group? I thought you knew. I thought you all would have known that. The sad part of this is we have a large senior population to expect everybody to have access to a computer and to the internet, and the site's quite difficult to find your way through. I was a bit upset about that. So once we sent the link out to the neighbors, people started to get very upset because we saw the December 12th meeting. I think if things were open and honest at that particular point in time, it would have helped soothe things. We'd still be here today, but we'd be less passionate, less fired up. So moving forward, we'd like to request to keep the high density residential new apartment developments already zoned as residential where existing amenities and infrastructure are in place. 410 Sunset does not support high density apartment buildings. Few concerns, we saw them addressed. Traffic. So to support the proposed development, the applicant submitted a transportation impact study that they sourced, not Central Elgin, not Elgin County. It was conducted on a single day. I'm in business. If I want to sell somebody on something, I'll do something very minimal. That traffic study should have been done over several days. And we know Sunset Road should have been done on a weekend, but it wasn't. Many times, specifically in summer months, adding 177 vehicles, and that's just one per apartment, per day, in and out, Karen Street, was not built to handle that and cannot handle that. Many times I've witnessed it myself, lineups outside on Karen Street, attempting to turn left. The chances people take, I myself, to get out on that left puts a lot of people's lives at risk because the cars are consistent and these cars will line up. They will be lined up in the building on peak hours. You will not be able to get out on Sunset safely. Number 2, water table. Well, FYI, it's shocking to some people. Our neighborhood has a lot of shallow fresh wells, 20 feet deep. That's it. Not 150, 200. They're talking about digging holes into the ground to support these on piers. You can't promise me you're not going to impact my 25-foot well, right? It's fresh water. I chose to be out here. I don't want chlorine in my water. Okay. Thank you. They talked about bringing water here years ago. Majority of neighbors turned it down for that very reason. Number 3, subsection 2.85.51 speaks to the rail corridors and states that development proposals shall incorporate safety measures such as fencing, berms, and comply with the land use compatibility policies of the plan. Concern of mine is that these fences and berms and tall buildings are going to project unacceptable sound levels from the trains and existing homes to the west side, almost like a ricochet effect. The part I'm the most proud about was the petition. 150 people fully supported keeping the zoning as is and agree with our planner. Only one person, now mind you, a lot didn't answer the door because 6'3". They'd open it for my wife, but I'm standing there 6'3" with a coat on. I might not open the door for me. So there were a few that didn't open the door. Only one person said no. And that person is a direct relative of a very large local developer. Okay, surprise. And that individual said 2 or 3 times, I'm surprised he doesn't know who I am. We agree, my wife and I, but everybody in this room support the recommendations submitted by your planner, Central Elgin's planner, Kevin McClure, and ask that the council takes the advice on the report submitted on December 12th, that the decision to approve the application would not conform to the policies the County of Elgin as a municipality has an oversupply of residential design designated lands. And I just wanted to add one more thing. When we heard about this 4 days before Christmas, it really ruined my Christmas. And I'm not joking. I was hard to live with for those 4 days until we could get through the holidays. Think it through. You have something to do, right? They mentioned themselves that they don't want to, there's not people looking for office space. Well, then why are they offering an office building, medical building in the basement of that apartment? Why? If he's telling you right away, nobody wants it for office space, right? We're just saying leave it as is. Thank you for everybody coming out tonight. And thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mr. Kovacs. I would ask for the next presenter to come forward. Again, being reminded to state your name and address, please. Thank you and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Alana McEachern. I live at 7 Marlene Street in St. Thomas, and I'm here representing myself and my husband, Mark McEachern, who also lives at 7 Marlene Street. So these are the following concerns that I have in regards to the lot at 410 Sunset being rezoned. The possible negative impact to the water table, as the houses in the Norman subdivision are on well water, some of which are shallow wells. The possibility of water and sewage lines being forced on the residents of Norman and the subsequent increase in taxes over several years if this is implemented. The increase in traffic, as it is already difficult enough to turn onto Sunset off of Karen. We already have county workers and non-residents cutting through the neighborhood to access the county buildings parking lot. They come through off of John Wise rather than Sunset, or they exit onto John Wise rather than Sunset. And non-residents who don't live here speed through the neighborhood, making it unsafe for residents to walk and ride their bikes. And we are seeing an overturn in our neighborhood of young families coming in. And so this is a concern for our children that are riding their bikes and their scooters and walking in our neighborhood. The increase in foot traffic throughout the neighborhood is a concern. The increase in foot traffic on the train tracks. My house backs up to the train tracks and already people walk back there. It is illegal in Canada to walk on the train tracks. And they do it anyways. It's trespassing and it's unsafe. I'm concerned about the possible increase in taxes if a bus line is run to this complex. The county doesn't currently have a bus line. If a bus line were to come out to the proposed building site, the county would have to either implement a bus line that services the county or contract out to the city of St. Thomas. And I am concerned that the costs associated with either of these options would be passed along to the taxpayers. The possibility of streetlights, sidewalks, and bus stops and bus shelters being installed on Sunset to service a bus line to the proposed building site. This would disrupt the county feeling or the country feeling of the Norman Lindale neighborhood, infringing on the frontage of properties located on Sunset. The light pollution a build like this would bring to the neighborhood of Norman Lindale. I moved here from Hunt Club in London to get a country neighborhood. I see stars right now, and those will be robbed from me if this goes in. It is my understanding that the city planner, Kevin McClure, submitted a report to council at the meeting held on December 12th and also spoke in regards to this report at the same meeting. In summary, he stated that in the new official plan completed in August of 2022, there is an oversupply of residential lands already set out for residential development in Elgin County. And therefore, there would be no justification for the rezoning of this piece of property. At this meeting, Councillor Halpin talked about there being a food desert situation in this neighborhood, as well as there being a bus stop within 300 meters of the space. There is not a bus stop within 300 meters of this proposed building site. The closest bus stop is to 410 Sunset, is located at Parkside Collegiate, which is 2,000 meters away from the proposed building site. There is also no infrastructure within the proximity of the proposed building site that would alleviate Councillor Halpin's issue regarding there being a food desert. There is no grocery store, variety store, pharmacy, post office, park, anything like that, anywhere near this proposed development site. In fact, the councillor's own village of Sparta has more infrastructure supports than 410 Sunset and the neighborhood of Norman Lindale, with a gas station, a variety store, the LCBO, a post office, school, community hall, and restaurant. At the same meeting on December 12th, when speaking about the development in regards to Hill Street and Port Stanley, Councillor Bachman at 25 minutes and 23 seconds stated, and I'm paraphrasing here, based on the professionals we've employed to make these decisions, I don't feel we're in a position to negate their study and their professionalism. He also stated that the facts were right in front of them, meaning you guys, the councillors, and everyone besides Councillor Graham voted to approve of the development, which is based on the studies conducted by staff. I respectfully ask that when this comes to vote, council do the same in this instance, to vote in support of the professionals you have employed, take their recommendations into account based on the studies they have conducted and their professionalism. And if you were to vote against the recommendations of staff in this particular instance, I would be left questioning as to why your motivation to do so would be. Thank you for taking the time to listen to myself and my neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McEachern. Do we have any further speakers? Yep. Okay. And if you could state your name and address, sir, thank you.
My name is Herman Rahowski. I live at 353 Sunset Drive. Your worships, esteemed councillors, staff, and good citizens of Central Elgin, my name is Herman Rahowski. This council was democratically elected to steer the municipality of Central Elgin on a carefully studied, carefully deliberated, and carefully planned course. The direction of that course was established in August of 2022. To deviate from that official plan because of a developer's profit-driven fear-mongering, be it subtle or overt, is rash and short-sighted. Proposed plans by developers come with no guarantees and are driven by a cash-positive bottom line. Altruism and goodwill is never the primary reason for proposed property development. I oppose any amendments to the official plan with regards to 410 Sunset Drive, and I oppose amendments to the zoning designation of said land. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rahowski. Anyone else in the gallery that wishes to speak to this? Please come. Yep, come along. Thank you very much. If you could get your name and address, sir.
My name's Devin DeGram. I live at 8 Applegate Lane, just around the corner here. I don't have much to say except for I agree very muchly with the quality of life. You know, I moved here. I'm a young guy. I'm probably one of the youngest here. I worked hard to live in a community where I could raise my kids. Again, they could see the stars. You know, I pay taxes probably more. You look at Shedden, we're more than double, right? And we support all the local things that a lot of St. Thomas gets to enjoy. What bothers me is with this new housing coming in, I feel that, as they've stated, it's a lower income for younger people. They say for people who want to work. For someone who works for a business in St. Thomas here, I find very much that for the majority, those who are looking for that lower income, who don't want to work hard, as I have, to live in a community like this, those are generally the ones that stay at home, that don't put in the work, which leads to mischief. Such mischief I've experienced is just in the last month, I've been broke into already multiple times from people who walk up. You want to put a bus route in here that's now going to truck in people who are living in low income housing? What kind of safety does that give us? So that's my fears and concerns, as well as the lighting. What can I enjoy about country living now? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. James Kelch, I live at 14 North Valerie. First of all, I'd like to commend whoever was up there. I feel 100% the same. I used to live uptown in St. Thomas, which was a great place to live, but it was very, lots of people, lots of crime. And I saved up every last penny I could to move out here, much like this fine gentleman right here. I'm going to keep it real short. Everyone else, great points. I mean, it's just a credit to the community. Really, I'm really proud. Two things. The traffic survey, that's woefully unacceptable. Anyone who's made a left turn out of here, I mean, come on, let's get real. Come down here on a Friday or Saturday night in the summertime. Not a chance. You got to go out to the lights. You got to go out to the lights. And that means, like, I'm sorry, I forget your name. Alana. The traffic that's going to come through our neighborhoods because people can't get out of here or they're trying to skip here will be incredible. 177 people, are you kidding? 177? How many people we got living back here? It's less than that. It's probably less than that. That traffic survey, I'm telling you, it is not acceptable. I'm not sure who did it, but it's not right. And the transportation thing, I mean, give me a break. I mean, we're gonna base this huge thing that's gonna show up on our corner on maybe we might send buses out there. No, I'm sorry. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone in this neighborhood coming out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Call. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mr. Call. Anyone else coming up to present?
Can you see me over there? Tim Kaplanis, I'm at 11 North Valerie.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not going to repeat everything everybody said because they hit it right on the head of the nail. My concern is if the zoning is changed to high density and the market that the developer is targeting falls through, and that, you know, the professionals, whoever, the seniors, whoever they want or they're targeting falls through, and now there's a different target that goes after that land that's now developed, or they pull out and another developer wants to come in that doesn't have the same high quality what's the word, aspirations, thank you very much, What kind of a demographic is that going to target? And what's that going to bring to our neighborhood? It might not be what we like in this community. Our neighborhood, you know, it's well versed. We're all diverse. We all get along. I want to call it one of the best kept secrets in Elgin County. People come into our neighborhood and they don't even know we're back here. And that to me, that adds so much value. And when that building, if it were to, the proposal were to go through and there's a development there, I'm very concerned that the value of our homes will drop significantly.
Yes.
Significantly. And I know our taxes won't drop in comparison. So there's a financial, there's a safety. You brought it up. That's, you laid it right on the head. My concern is safety. I really think you want to have faith in mankind that everybody does good, but there's a lot of evil out there. And I think this now, that's best kept secret, now is going to have a lot of visibility. And we're going to be a target. And very concerned about break-ins, drugs, everything that type of thing brings to the community when the numbers are high dense. Does that anyway, I just want to say I wasn't as prepared as everybody else was, but it was really bothering me that if it does get changed to high density and the developer pulls out and another developer comes in, maybe it might not be aesthetic to the that architect might have a different vision, and now we've got an eyesore and we've got now we've got a problem. So thank you for your time. I hope council considers everything here. I don't know what kind of representation you get. I know it's a new council on previous when amendments happening, but I think this is a great turnout. This is a good indication how strong we are as a neighborhood. A lot of us are probably seeing each other for the first time, and I think we have a commonality here, and we just do not want to see this go forward. So
thank you, Mr.
for your time.
Kaplanis. I appreciate the passion. Thank you very much. I will check. I think we should check if there's anyone online, if that's okay. Do we have to make sure there's no one here first? Oh, procedurally we do. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to present? Come along, sir, please. And your passion is, it's not lost on us, please.
Hi, I'm Greg Cross. I live at 16 North Valerie. I'm second generation. I've lived here almost my entire life. As far as what they're speaking about, I'm a contractor, and they're talking about, oh, they're only going to pour it on slab on grade. That's not going to affect drainage. That has nothing to do with it. That's a bunch of hot air. In fact, if there was actually underground parking or something like that, that would give somewhere for the water to go, and there actually would be services. It really makes no difference. There'll be a lot of water shed off a building like that. I know it's what I do. Secondly, I have one 2.5-year-old and one newborn. I don't want to see 177 units worth of traffic going through my neighborhood. I just don't want to see it. That's a car for every unit. That's probably not going to be the case. That's probably going to be 2 cars on average for every unit, right? Thirdly, as far as light pollution, I know when I sit in my backyard and I look out there, everyone knows what Ontario plant is. Everyone's seen it. Those are LEDs. I'm assuming they're proposing to put LEDs there. LEDs are not always the answer. I can see St. Thomas. I can see Eagle Ridge that is just being built right now. Those are all LEDs. It is light pollution. The sky is not dark. You cannot see the stars anymore. This is not going to be country living. It's not. And, fourthly, we kowtow that we have all this green space and we're an agriculture county. We're not an agriculture county anymore. Look around. We don't have any fields left. Our scenery is it's not what it was when I was a kid. So that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other public presentations?
Wayne Duncan, 24 Marlene Street.
Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you. A couple people have mentioned Mr. McClure's report from December 12th, which I hold in my hand, which I've gone through 7 times in the report. Does he mention the oversupply of designated residential lands? If I drive down Southdale East towards Fairview or Centennial, I mean, you can't tell me that about the houses being built and how many being built. If I go down Centennial to Elm, all in that corner, I mean, I don't know how many are being built there, but there is quite a few. We would like to, obviously, from all the speakers, we would like to keep it zoned as it is. To me, the 2 representatives, the 2 gentlemen from the developers, I just got this kind of funny feeling that they're saying it's shovel ready. Let's start to build. But then after the fact, let's worry about the turning lane. After the fact, let's worry about the traffic on Karen. After the fact, let's worry about their wells that might be affected. Let's worry about the sunset traffic, especially in the summer going down to Port Stanley, which is going to be a nightmare. If you come into our subdivision, which is rather unique, excuse me, from spring down to fall, we've got, excuse me, we've got kids going down the middle of the street, playing, riding their bikes, doing whatever, people walking their dogs. If that happens, if those apartments are built, traffic is going to be tenfold, even more. Foot traffic, car traffic, vehicle traffic. And I can't see with staff coming in to work into this municipal building, turning onto Karen, plus buses picking up kids, plus 177 people, if they all get jobs. Let's say even half of them have to go to work. Pulling out onto Sunset is, I'm going to have to change my schedule. So 30 minutes before I usually go from work, I'm going to have to go 30 minutes before. And I lost my train of thought. So it's mainly the kids. The unique subdivision that we have, the traffic is going to increase. My wife and I lived in London for 20 plus years. We lived in an area old south of London. Probably everybody recognizes that. And it was a lovely, lovely area. But we had high density apartments about 3 blocks away. And for 15 years, we had nothing but problems. People breaking into houses, people wandering into backyards, people breaking into vehicles at night. Here, if I, excuse me, if I leave my vehicle open and I forget to lock it, no problem. We've even left the door unlocked and it's no problem because we know we know that's safe. Did I say 24 Marlene? No, that was the wrong address. So we would like to obviously with the amount of people here, we would like to keep it zoned as it is. And let's move on with the thinking about something else.
Thank you very much.
I beg your pardon, but you mentioned earlier that this piece of property has sat vacant for many, many years. There must be a reason behind that, because I'm sure that it would have attracted somebody by now. It's because of the low vacancy rate. I know that's what's pushing it, money. But at the same time, it is our community and you will destroy it. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I think I am going to ask Susie Cardoso if there's anyone member of the public attending by Zoom that wishes to speak. Susie?
Mayor Sloan, there are no attendees via Zoom wishing to speak. Oh, I do see one. 1 second.
Thank you.
I'll admit them.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, sir. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Michael Trussell. I am a part of the development team. I'm an architect. I am the architect for the project, designing the buildings and responsible for the design of the site plan. I wanted to say a few things. I do appreciate the passion of the individuals who've come and spoken tonight. With that said, I think it's important to remember that we're hearing from the homeowners here, and that's a privileged position to be in. The voice that we're not hearing, the voice that's not on the table, is the voice of individuals who are looking for rental housing right now, which is simply not available within the community. We've already heard that there's less than 1% vacancy rate, and I think that's important to keep in mind. There's also been a few misconceptions on behalf of the individuals who have spoken, and I'd like to try to clarify them. I'd like to try to put their minds at ease about some of them. In terms of the reason that the property is sat vacant for years, I think the reason that the property is sat vacant is because of the current zoning, which is very limiting, and that's what we're specifically asking to change with this application. In regards to the concern that was raised about the traffic study having been commissioned by the development team and not by the municipality, I just want to clarify that's the norm. And in fact, that's a requirement for the application. Our submission would not have been accepted without it. And the engineer that prepared the study is a professional that's held to the standards of the Professional Engineering Association of Ontario. They're not looking to fool anyone with their results. They're based on actual recorded data, and you know, the study is there for anyone to see as needed. One of the delegates mentioned underground parking and a basement. I just want to clarify, there is no underground parking planned. There is no basement planned. These buildings are intended to be slab on grade construction. So a concrete slab with a 4-foot frost wall and everything else being above grade. There will not be deep foundations. And that's part of the strategy here. We're looking to bring these buildings online quickly to help address the shortage of housing. There is clearly a demand out there, and we're looking to build these quickly using locally made materials from the Element 5 factory in St. Thomas. They're wood plank panels, wood plank walls, and the buildings go up very quickly. We've realized similar buildings in Kitchener and in York region, and they're quite beautiful inside and out. In regards to the concern about site lighting, and lighting spilling onto neighboring properties, that simply won't be allowed as a part of this site plan approval process. We will have to deliver a site lighting plan that demonstrates that there will not be any light spillage. We would not get site plan approval without it, and the planners in the room can attest to that. And my last point is in regard to the number of vehicles. A few people have mentioned that there would be 2 cars per unit. That's simply not true. Our site plan is based on a request for 1.25 parking spaces per unit. So 1 parking space per unit plus an additional 0.25 to address visitors, you know, family coming to visit people who might be living there. So I hope that clears up some of the misconceptions. I do understand the concerns of the community, but I think some of them may not be fully founded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trussell. Your points, like everyone else's, are appreciated by the council. No, I'm actually going to have to ask due to timing here, if you'll forgive me.
Just be a quick one. If the property wasn't readjusted to be residential, why wasn't it done before? Just because he's saying that it's not done now, it could have been done in the last 20 years. Why didn't that happen?
I think, first of all, we've been pretty respectful of everyone's time.
I beg
here.
your pardon.
That's okay, and I appreciate the passion. I'm not trying to be a, but I would like to, if there are any more questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we do have two others online, I'm told.
Hi, I live at 19 Marlene Street. My name is Michelle Harris. I'm representing my partner as well, Danielle Parsons.
Welcome.
Thank you. I agree with everything that you've heard tonight, and I just want to reiterate that we did get a petition with 150 names on it that should sit with the council. Listen to your constituents, please. Question, and I don't know if you can answer it right now, but shovel-ready land that has all the infrastructure ready to go. I've looked at the some of the reports, one of them being the Dillon Consultant report. That was a lot of it was done, I think, before the finishing of the official plan, and a lot of that was used for the official plan. They have a chart in that report that talks about shovel-ready land, talks about how much in the future we're going to need for housing, what kind of housing, and it breaks it all down. If I'm not mistaken, we have a lot of shovel-ready land right now in Central Elgin, according to the report. And there are shovel-ready lands now scheduled for high density. So again, going back to the planner's report of the extra land, and we have other land ready, shovel-ready for high density right now in more appropriate places than this. There is no park. I don't know if everyone in this room and on the Zoom are aware, but when we first moved here, we thought we could go across the road and walk around the old psych hospital, and that was super. That was a super idea. They are 24/7 guarded. You cannot walk around there. What you're basically doing is you're putting an apartment in without any community park, which is words coming out of your official plan. Anything you go forward building, you want to have community parks. I read that. There is no community park. There is no park close to here. What's going to happen is our backyard is going to be their playground. Not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. As a taxpayer in this area, I just can't tell you how unacceptable that is to me. It just makes my blood boil right now. And I just want to say again, the 150 people that are on that petition, what do we have back here? 47 houses, 50 houses. Where did all those people come from? They are outside the 120 feet or meters or whatever it is that you sent those letters to. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Thank you for your time. And Tina, if you're here with that letter from your neighbor, can you read it?
Thank you. I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to. I think we're going to go to an online person now, Susie.
Hello?
Carol, please state your full name and address for the record.
My name is Carol Gagan and I'm at 13 North Valerie. And my concern again is this idea of parking and 1.2 spaces is loads. I have driven through, I don't know how many new subdivisions. The cars are all over the road. They have driveways, but the cars are parked all different ways. People are going to have 2 cars. Secondly, I am a senior. Maybe I'm one of the people that you'll be targeting, except those apartments would be far too small for me. And this is one of the complaints I've heard from a lot of my friends. So if you're looking at seniors who are retiring, you're out of your league. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gagan. I know you're home well. Where are we now to? Okay, Susie.
I got a word.
Scott and Carrie,
One
please
moment,
state
sir.
your,
Oh, I don't have a.
Just, is that Mr. Toth? 1 second, sir. We're going to go to the online and we'll come right back to you.
Scott and Carrie, please state your full name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Carrie Woolley and we live at 49 South Valerie. I felt that we were being unrepresented over on this side of the ravine. I just want to say, I believe it was Mr. Trussell who mentioned that some of our concerns are unfounded. My husband and I have 7 kids between us and moved here over 10 years ago. And when he mentions about the parking, it makes me laugh because with all of our children owning their own vehicles, I don't know where you park 0.25 of a car. And most of you that have walked past my home and our new driveway that we put in to accommodate all of the vehicles for our children can tell that you can't just park 0.25 of a car. As well, I'd like to state that of all of our children, some are students, some are professionals, most 3 or 4 of them still reside here, will never ever be able to afford the housing that's going in there unless there was a government subsidy. So I'm just trying to get my head around what they're pushing here. And then I think somebody was promoting the pizza place, the Harvest Pizza. That lady doesn't own that building. She rents it. So if she can rent that building to operate her business, why can't somebody use the old CAS building there and promote it for rent? I've considered using it for rental for Elections Canada and Elections Ontario, and that might be an option with the new redistribution. However, that is not my point here today. I'm just saying, I think that this is a terrible idea because we live on the throughway for everybody from Central Elgin that actually wants to get out the Sunset to come out this way to 45. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Toth. I think that's Don Toth and Mr. Toth, would you like to present? I know you, sir, please.
A few words. We've been there in our area, 10 North Valerie Street, since 1976. We moved in and, it's been wonderful. Everybody, doesn't matter who's there, they wave. There's nobody that runs by you and asking you, what's your problem? It's just a great thing. If that ever goes out, I think we're going to lose our democracy in this whole area. And let's get it out.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. Susie, any more online?
Mayor Sloan, there are no attendees via Zoom wishing to speak.
Okay. Please go ahead.
I was asked to read a letter that was submitted by my neighbor. As a resident of Central Elgin, and more specifically, the area immediately adjacent to 410 Sunset Drive.
Excuse me just for a moment. I'm going to need the name of the person. Sorry.
Sorry. George and Rebecca Capajonis.
Okay. I think there was a letter came in, but okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. 410 Sunset Drive. We would like to express concerns regarding the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Zelenko Primo Limited on behalf of Quincy Developments. When we made the decision to relocate to this area, the country-like setting located just outside of the city was very attractive. An opportunity to escape aspects of city living, such as high density residential buildings, opting instead for a neighborhood with less dense residential footprint, large open green spaces, and mature trees. These luxuries make this particular area of Central Elgin desirable, something that current residents paid a premium for in the way of home prices and continue to pay a premium for in the way of annual property tax. The surrounding 410 Sunset Drive is hardly built up in a manner that is suitable to support high-density housing, as the application suggests. Most notably is the lack of lifestyle infrastructure currently in place to support the proposed high-density development and its potential residents, including resident-friendly services such as access to public transportation, retail and recreational green space, including a park or playground for children and families to gather and play. High-density housing may have benefits for a municipality, assuming that it is well-placed within areas able to support and sustain its residents, and not in areas that will create additional development requirements like retail and or infrastructure burden for the municipality, such as public transportation. The latter is of particular concern, as costs associated with infrastructure development would ultimately be passed along to the taxpayers. Additionally, as indicated in the revised application for official plan amendment dated January 12th, 2023, an official plan was adopted by the municipal council in August of 2022, following the completion of a residential land needs study, which concluded that there was oversupply of designated residential land. As a result, it was determined that there would not be adequate justification for the redesignation of the lands for additional residential use at this time. In response, the revised application submitted on the behalf of the applicant proposed the redesignation of land from residential to natural heritage elsewhere in the municipality, allowing space for this specific land used amendment to be passed. Land use amendment to be passed. While this proposal would certainly suit the needs of the applicant, it minimizes the time and thoughtful effort put in by all those involved in developing the municipality's recently approved official plan, including consideration of current land designations and any public input that was solicited from taxpayers. Respectfully, we ask council to deny this application and maintain the current land use designated for 410 Sunset Drive. Sincerely, George and Rebecca Capagianis, 351 Sunset Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. We received that letter and have that in our mailbox. So I think I'll move now if there's any questions from council, realizing that this is the draft. But if there are questions from council, I would ask Councillor Halpin, do you have a question?
Thank you. Before I ask my question, I will say hello to the neighbors that I've seen, and specifically to Mr. Kovacs, I would like to say that it sounds like there are two things that I need to apologize for and clarify there. And one is that as a person who doesn't use the bus, my having been informed that it comes as far as the forensic building, which would have put it near to across the street, was something that I misunderstood from speaking with people on Sunset when they were talking about things that they experience in density there. So I want to say that I appreciate very much that the two of you have done some homework on that. And thank you for making sure that our council is aware that in fact it's much farther away. The other thing I would like to clarify is that at the time that I was asked to sit down and explain the development, I didn't realize yet that everyone had received letters. And so I didn't actually realize that I wasn't sitting in a room full of people who had already watched this meeting and were already aware of everything that had been said. So I do apologize for that misunderstanding and thank you. Now for my question, I would like to say, I don't know if staff will have this information available right now, or if this is something that you'd have to provide for us for the next meeting. But it was a pertinent question that someone asked about how much land we have that is designated for high density as is. And if you can speak to that now, I'd be happy for us to know what is designated for that and where in Central Elgin it is. And if that's something that you don't have available, is that something that you could provide for us next meeting?
Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through you to Councillor Halpin. The municipality of Central Elgin official plan doesn't specifically provide like density designations within it. Within the residential designation, it permits a wide range of residential use subject to meeting certain criteria. There are a number. Oh, sorry. There are several applications that have been approved within the municipality of Central Elgin that have had specific zoning to allow for high density use. Through this process, that's what these individuals are permitted. But with respect to density pre-designation, there is no specific high density designation within the official plan. So whether or not there's already specific approvals in place or zoning in place for high density uses that have been approved previously, that's definitely something that we can bring forward at a subsequent meeting. There are a number of applications that have been approved in Port Stanley that do allow for apartment uses. But off the top of my head, and unless Mr. Perrin has any building permit numbers that he would be able to pull up, but I think again, without getting into the specifics, that'd be something we probably should bring forward at a subsequent meeting.
I'm satisfied with that, Mr. McClure. Are there any other other members of council that wish to speak? Mr. McClure, could you give us the next steps, please? I know this is a draft and when you're coming back and what the process goes to for now for these folks, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. I guess it kind of falls a little bit to council's direction to staff as how this is to proceed. Ultimately, as Mr. Campbell has alluded to, they view this as a slight or a technical amendment to the process of the applications that have been submitted to date. Staff is of the position that it is not a technical amendment, as was indicated through Mr. Campbell's I guess presentation. They provided that there's no change to the application other than providing the residential designation. However, they do note that it is to be brought forward. It is now a redesignation and not a site-specific exception, which again, up to the direction of council of whether or not they consider that a minor exception to the plan. Plus, there are additional lands that have now been proposed as justification that are municipally owned lands to have it redesignated, albeit not through this process. But it is something that would have an impact on whether or not the municipality and other, in concert with other applications or policies in the official plan, if that's something that they would want to accept. So ultimately, I would suggest that the new information that was proposed in the middle of January would not be a technical amendment and would require resubmission of an application because it has been revised. Otherwise, I guess other opportunities would be to, again, go to and hold another public meeting based on the resubmission of the application. But I think that's more of I guess something to council's direction as how they would like to proceed.
Comments from any members of council? Mr. Shipway, please.
Just to add to what Mr. McClure has stated, general practice for an application like this would be that Mr. McClure would bring an informational report for council at the next meeting of council, doing summaries of key themes identified from the members of public and stakeholders here. And that would include addressing, as Mr. Campbell noted, the change to the application throughout. And that would be considered at the next meeting of council. And that's where council would make the decision if you were holding another public meeting or if you were dealing with the application as Mr. McClure has stated. But that is generally the process for an informational report at the next meeting of council. And that would generally include the bylaws for council consideration.
I'm fine with that. And I think the council are okay with that. I'm just going to ask the clerk. Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passage of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralalgon.org. indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those in attendance wishing further information can sign the hearing attendance sheet located on the podium. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. Before I conclude the meeting, thank you for your passion. Thank you for your information this evening. This is a step. This is a draft. We're going forward. We will hear. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. Thank you. I do. Oh, can we have a 5-minute recess, please? We're on camera. Thank you. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision respecting 37719 Lake Line, Port Stanley. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, I'd ask Ms. Wilson, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Mayor Sloan, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land on Friday, December the 16th, 2022. Notice was posted to the property by municipal staff as well as the municipal website, and notice was also displayed in the weekly C-Buzz newspaper advertisements.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. As has been indicated, this is a public meeting to present a draft bylaw for 37719 Lake Line. It's, I guess, part of this bylaw amendment. You can see the property on the screen south of Lake Line, just north of the Kettle Creek Golf Course and the Kettle Creek Public School. It is in relation to a draft plan of subdivision that has been filed with the county. Just to note that changes to the legislation through Bill 23 don't require, or I actually don't have the legislative authority to request public meetings for those applications anymore. I'm just simply bringing it forward because it is in relation to an application that is currently with the county, and this is what's helping facilitate that development on these lands. So what the proposal is a draft plan of subdivision for 97 residential units. They're predominantly, I believe, 70 units are proposed for single detached residential dwellings. I believe there's about 18 or so semi-detached, and then the remaining, which I believe about 9 units, is our townhouse development. The 3 separate zones that are being proposed is the general R1 zone that exists in Port Stanley right now to permit the single attached and semi-detached residential development. Then a site-specific R1 zone that I'll be showing on the screen to permit the townhouse units, because right now there are no general provisions that would allow for that type of use in the Port Stanley bylaw. And then site-specific OS3 zones to prohibit development in the natural heritage and natural hazard features that are identified on the site and within the official plan. So just for the purposes, again, in relation to the application at the county for approval, and I'll get into some of the specifics that need to be addressed as well as through this process, because they were related in my report. As you can see, predominantly it's single detached around the kind of like the base of the hill and adjacent to the Kettle Creek Golf Course. There's a internal block that you can kind of see. That's the location of the townhouse dwelling units. And then flanking those along that internal roadway is the proposed location of the semi-detached. As part of the original application and some of the technical details that we're revising or we're looking at right now, stormwater management solution was proposed on the adjacent lands, again, owned by the owner of this property. As part of the official plan update process, there was a consideration and to have these lands included for future residential development as well. There's policy direction in the official plan that provides that regional facilities are the preferred approach for the municipality. And this location was, I guess, proposed as a way to address that. Concerns that came up originally through the application and required revisions based on concerns that were made back in January of last year, and then addressed kind of through the process with discussions with KCCA and staff at Central Elgin, is the updated flood fringe lines that were approved as part of that OP update process. So what can be seen on the left of the screen was what was identified as a flood fringe area. Again, only really to be addressed or be of a concern under those kind of extreme Hurricane Hazel events. Again, something that still needs to be addressed through the policies, but ultimately, as part of some of the modifications and in that had been worked out on the right, is a proposed cut fill balance that kind of indicates what under those same conditions, what the capacity would be and on the proposed infrastructure works at the southern portion to allow for the development to proceed and not impact the adjacent property owners. So again, that was part of the things that need to be clarified as part of the zoning bylaw amendment process, because that would help facilitate the development of the plan of subdivision. And staff, along with Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, have found that this can be addressed, or satisfy that this can be addressed or further refined through the plan of subdivision process and the conditions that would be applied at that time. This takes us to the amendment itself. If anybody knows Port Stanley in the I guess the amalgamations of areas of Southold and Yarmouth and everything, there's a lot of amendment pieces to this because of the kind of incremental things changes that have occurred to the Port Stanley bylaw. So the first being that part of that being that bylaw 97-6 of the township of Southold as applies to the areas defined in section 3 of this bylaw are hereby repealed. So these lands are actually part of lands that were brought in by Southold Township through amalgamations, and portions or the entirety of the property is covered by that bylaw. So the first thing that we need to do is remove those that previous bylaw to ensure that going forward it's part of the Port Stanley bylaw. So that brings forward a section or part 2 of the amendment, which is Schedule A to this bylaw, being a new index map. So it deletes the old index map and brings forward a new index map to the bylaw, which can be seen on here, because those lands that are shown that apply within the municipal limits of the Village of Port Stanley weren't in the bylaw. So that this brings it in, and then leads us to part 3 of the amendment being a new schedule, being Schedule B to this amendment, being map part 3AU, and then part 4 of the amendment being map part 8A. So this property or portions of the property straddle 2 different map parts. So that's introducing those new site-specific map parts that are associated with this amendment to the bylaw. And then part 5 designates those areas that apply to this proposal on Schedule B and C as R1. So I'll just indicate and show you here. So you can see that's the map part 3AU at the very top. There's a portion of those lands that are contained on this bylaw. I'll refer to later on in the bylaw, there is a section that does talk about designating the OS 3-20, but just I won't be going back to the slide, just something for you to note. That then brings us to the new map part 8A. So this is the new section that is now being brought in from the Southold bylaw into the Village of Port Stanley bylaw. And again, part of that process and designates those different lines in the hatching, cross hatching, and then the bold lines that I'll speak to later in the presentation. So then part 6 of the amendment brings forward, it designates the lands on Schedule C here to as R1-92. That's again the specific amendment that applies to those lands on this schedule that really only apply to the townhouse development, and introduces a new subsection to the residential subsection of the bylaw, being 9.2.2.93. Defines that area shown on map part, missing a T there, map part 8A as R1-92, provides that additional permitted in buildings and structures be 1 unit of a townhouse dwelling on 1 lot. This is consistent with how the approach is done for single detached dwellings within the Port Stanley bylaw. Provides a frontage of 9.4 meters. That's the width that's been requested by the applicant's consultants through this process, and reflects what's in their draft plan of subdivision. Provides a coverage of 40% as a maximum. Provides a front yard setback of 7 meters, and then provides side yards specifically for townhouse dwellings being 3.5 meters exterior side yard and 0 meter interior side yard along a common wall between dwelling units. So the bylaw itself currently is broken down into single detached, semi-detached, and provides specific setbacks in the bylaw. So this is again being consistent with that approach in the Port Stanley bylaw. And then provides that the maximum number of townhouse units is 5 per lot. Right now, I believe there's a 5-unit block and a 4-unit block that's being proposed in the development. So this would again reflect that what's being proposed. There is no townhouse definition within the bylaw, so we have to include that within this amendment so that we can apply these regulations. And then the provides exceptions to those site-specific provisions in the general regulations for the R1 zone to allow for this to occur. Part 8 of the amendment, again, goes back. This is designating the lands outlined on those previous schedules in the crosshatched lines as the OS 3-20. So that's again reflecting the areas that have been justified and identified through the natural heritage studies, natural hazard studies that were submitted as part of this application to prohibit development. Typical as what has been done through the Port Stanley bylaw in the OS3 section of the plan, where a new subsection is added that applies to this specific designation, it being 8.4.2.19. defines that area, those areas on those specific map parts in the bylaw as OS 3-20, provides permitted uses being for conservation and drainage purposes, and provides the building and structures being building and structures erected by the municipality, corporation, or conservation authority for uses permitted in those subsections. So again, understanding that drainage works need to be undertaken in order to ensure the stability of the slope, et cetera, that the municipality and or conservation authority can do that work. Again, providing exceptions to the general provisions of the open space 3 zone. Essentially for this, the provision is that the general uses that are permitted in that aren't allowed other than the conservation uses. And then part 10 of the bylaw further deletes a specific map, being map part 5 in the bylaw section, and includes a new map part 5, because mainly because in this map part, as you can kind of see the text in those adjacent to those dashed areas, there are references in the one specifically to the left to subject to the Southold Township zoning bylaw. That was removed, so we had to reflect that change in this map part. And then typical as we have done through other amendments, part 11 of the amendment includes Schedule D and F to the bylaw, being the consolidated schedules for map part 3, map part 8, being all of the amendments that have made to date to those map parts, including those included as provided by this amendment itself. So as can you see it on the screen? That's the consolidated map part 3. And then this is the consolidated map part 8. Thank you.
I could ask the clerk if you've received any written submissions on the proposal.
Mayor Sloan, correspondence has been received from Mark Hall stating concerns that the plan of subdivision is permitting homes to be built on top of lands that consist of a year-round stream and floodplain. He voices concerns with single entrance and egress to the development off of Lake Line. This correspondence has been provided to council and staff.
Thank you. Before opening the meeting to questions from the public, please be advised of the following. If you're attending in person, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address. If you're listening on the computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon and the questions will be taken in sequential order. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak to this? Susie? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, sir.
Kevin Monaz might be able to speak more clearly about that.
First, sir, could you come and introduce yourself, please?
Hi there, James Glover. Kevin Monaz might be able to address that a little bit better with the concerns with the flooding and so forth, or of the, is it really, as we talked about, is the cut and fill concern, or?
Mr. McClure, please.
Sorry, apologies. A long time since I've been in the council chambers. It's ultimately I'm aware that so Kevin Monez is one of the consultants on this application for the applicant. It is my understanding if there's specific technical concerns or questions that council or the public might have, he may be able to appropriately address that unless there's specific questions or unless Mr. Glover would like him to speak to the application. I will leave that up.
Yep. Awesome. Kevin's on Zoom right now, and he's texting me at the same time. When it comes to floodplain volume stuff, there's 11% increase in volume for floodplain is what he's asking to pass on. And do you guys have him on Zoom? Or is he here on Zoom?
Mayor Sloan, I do have him on here. I will admit him.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. We can switch to him now if you'd like.
you.
Okay, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, it's okay. Susie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can.
He's just muted. Please unmute.
Yep. It keeps muting me for some reason. Okay, seems to be working now. Yeah, I just wanted to address those two concerns, I suppose. Yeah, based on the plan that Mr. McClure had up, we are proposing a net 11% increase to the floodplain storage that was on these lands. So that comment has now, or concern, sorry, has now been addressed. And regarding the singular access, it's below sort of the 100 unit threshold to permit one access point. As well, there is a proposed block set aside for a future connection to lands to the west, should they be developed in the future, which would provide secondary access.
Thank you. Susie, are there any other questions online?
Mayor Sloan, there are no attendees via Zoom wishing to speak. Mark Hall just raised his hand.
Okay. Mr. Hall?
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thanks very much for having this meeting and everyone in attendance. Planners, obviously, there's actually been quite a bit of discussion on this piece of property that, yes, goes back to 2021. The land, I mean, I take umbrage a little bit, unfortunately, to the recent comment that the flood issue and egress point had been addressed. As we know, I guess if we could preface this whole thing by starting with, there's a surplus of existing suitable land to be built on in Port Stanley and Central Elgin, like various communities as well, including Port Stanley. So I'm a little bit flummoxed. There seems to be a lot of inconsistencies with our official plan, Central Elgin, official plan. We talk quite a bit about natural heritage features, the importance of protecting our, wetlands and water resources and natural areas, which, when we look at developing or trying to develop land that it is zoned basically OS3 conservation land, and then natural heritage and hazardous land, which is basically a large portion of this is wetland, floodplain that's formally mapped. And I'll get to that in a moment. And then we got a Carolinian forest with endangered species like butternut trees. They do not do well when you start getting into their slope area or change hydrodynamics. But forget all that, because obviously the Ontario government has got the More Homes Built Faster Act that's in place now, and some of those priorities have changed. The environment is not as important as perhaps it was to the current government. That's their decision to do, and I think it's potentially being contested in some ways. But that's getting back to this particular parcel of land. It doesn't meet the threshold. Like we're talking about. Have you guys if I could need maybe more kind of collaborative? I don't think there'd be too many speakers. I know I kind of represent a kind of a larger group in the interest of time and your time. I know how important the job is, and congratulations, by the way. And thank you for taking on the role of the civic duty. But this is important. Why are we doing? I'm representing a few people, so a few other people might want to speak. But ultimately, we have, we just had $17 million announced for flood mitigation, right? This is a piece of hydrological infrastructure that is, I don't want to say priceless, because you probably could put a price tag on it and it would be in the millions. I mean, theoretically, if you took $1 million or whatever out of that 17 million and bought this land and kept it as natural heritage land, that would be, the return on investment would be substantial, like millions of dollars in that regard. Paving over it and turning it into basically building on homes with unsuspecting people buying them. We're the only municipality in, one of the few municipalities in Ontario that allows for a 2-zone flood concept. I've done probably, significant research on this and a lot of collaboration with experts, everybody from University of Western Ontario to, officials with the Conservation Authority, government officials, urban planners. I'm well-versed in, not as well-versed obviously as our professionals at the council, but I feel like I have a good handle on this, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, we could buy the land and that you couldn't buy this type of hydrological infrastructure that filters water and prevents flooding. We've got a school, we've got the arena, we've got homes all around it. It's, I guess maybe just to get to some practicalities, because I don't want to, be redundant. So feel free to cut me off if, or interject, I should say, if you want to have more of a collaborative conversation rather than me just talking. Like I said, I think discussion is really important for, the way our municipality runs. And I appreciate, public input, but Ontario is very clear, like the Ontario provincial government and the federal provincial government, they no matter what other items they've done, they have said explicitly, do not build on floodplains. So Port Stanley and Central Elgin is one of basically the few municipalities that allows for this. So this is an interesting thing. It kind of goes back to a weird other floodplain issue that we've had to try to deal with as our community, where there is an attempt to build on another OS3 piece of floodplain property. That there's a huge benefit for, like, it prevents ice jam backups from flooding like the whole area. So it's like a critical bend in the river. And not only that, but it has a piece of public owned land that was improperly and basically it was it was illegally closed and actually belongs to the municipality of Central Elgin. And that, I mean, this, how do you put it? This, the pattern of disrespecting, which is a strong word, but it's functionally correct, our coastal wetland lands and assets is not conducive to long-term sustainability, especially if you factor in things like climate change and just overall what makes like our communities work. So we can't, that doesn't make any sense to, when we have a surplus of properly zoned R1 and R2's land, which, covers a wide variety of housing types. Why, for goodness sakes, are we trying to, do this? Not to mention, there's a whole bunch of other legal issues, like there's a stream and wetland that runs through. It's got defined banks, defined bed. It's been there for years. We've got lots of local residents who are opposed to this, and they know what it was like. So why are we doing these types of things? If we could, I'm not sure, Ms. Wilson, did you get the email? I sent it to council just in advance because I wasn't sure how to set this up. I mean,
I'll interject, Mr. Hall. We received the communication and Ms. Wilson sent it on. Just before we go on, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to make this interactive. Susie, are there other folks that wish to speak?
No, there are none.
Okay, so Mr. Hall, I appreciate your comments. I'd like to limit them though to 37719 Lake Line. Is there anything further you'd like to offer?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess the big concern was, I wasn't sure if that particular other thing had been, because that was, I think with the OLT, it was, there was an issue about whether it would be, the zoning would be approved or not. And I was kind of curious, because if that was the case, then it would compound what was already a very risky situation to begin with. So yeah, maybe we could take that offline and discuss that later for sure. But getting back to this particular parcel of land, Mr. McClure, I apologize. You weren't actually forwarding or advancing the slides in your presentation. So I missed some of the visuals on what you were referring to. I just stayed on the main page, and I, got that feedback from some other neighbors who are, that I know personally. So I don't understand some of those points you made, but if I could, I did have a chance to look at a lot of the documentation, or all of the documentation, including the submitted floodplain map. There wasn't a whole lot of, there wasn't really a lot in there that said anything other than, this will be mitigated or addressed. But the unfortunate thing is the map itself it does not appear to be accurate. So what was submitted by, maybe Mr. Moniz could speak to this, but like, where were the floodplain maps got? Because I sent over that email to not all of you, but most of you. And if you could just maybe have a peek at that, like if you look at what the actual official Central Elgin flood mapping is, that was approved by the board and is now official documentation, is much bigger in the Central Elgin maps than what is portrayed in the consultant's map. So I'm just wondering if that was an error. Maybe Mr. Moniz could speak to where they got the information for that.
I'm actually going to stop here for a sec, Mr. Hall. Firstly, Mr. McClure, and firstly, let me ask the other members of council if they have any questions. Councillor Watson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It was noted that you were going to increase the floodplain by 11%. How do you do that? I don't know who to direct this question to.
Would someone like to speak to that, either Mr. Menez or Mr. Oh, sorry, or should it be Mr. I apologize. Should it be Mr. McClure? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through you to Councillor Watson. I believe that's something that Mr. Moniz can speak to. I do want to note that Carlow Creek Conservation Authority and the staff have been in direct, discussions and consultation with the applicant and Mr. Moniz is the applicant's agent and consultant on this. Again, this is something that we received, I believe Monday, the specific, the plan itself in conversations with Carlow Creek Conservation Authority, and through those discussions that we've had since the original report was submitted. Ultimately, it is something that we feel that can be addressed. It's a technical matter, and ultimately, it's something that I think that Mr. Moniz can get into a little bit more details and potentially Mr. Perrin.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. McClure. Are you able to, just for the sake of the people watching on Zoom, are you able to go to the slide that showed the map of our floodplain modeling? The slides were not advancing on Zoom, but it looks like slide number 5 there. So I apologize, I should have clarified. 11% increase in the floodplain volume in the areas of these lands in the region which we studied, which will show up on slide 5. I'm not seeing that on Zoom, but perhaps in the council chambers you're on slide 5 there. Maybe for the
yeah, Kevin, it's Lloyd, we are on slide 5.
Okay, so I guess on Zoom, so to speak to the previous speaker who was questioning the maps and seeing the maps, he still won't be able to see the maps, but perhaps we can provide them to him elsewhere. Anyways, so if you look the map on the left, that's pre-development. And certainly it does not. So the area shaded blue is the floodplain. It doesn't match exactly to what was adopted by council, solely because we've done a topographical survey of the area that's more accurate than the mapping that they based their maps on. So in consultation with Carlow Creek Conservation Authority, they're satisfied with our topographic survey, and it's based on the floodplain elevation of 178.9. So that's what you're seeing as the pre-development or the current state or extents of the floodplain. And then the map on the right is what we're proposing to compensate for that volume. Obviously, you can see that we're raising grades within the subdivision limits, which would remove the ponding volume within the subdivision. However, we're then cutting down the lands just east of what we're proposing there for an overland flow channel to get to the storm pond. So really what we're saying is within the area shaded blue, that post-development represents a net 11% increase to the floodplain volume in that area. So again, a net benefit to the overall watershed.
Thank you very much. Going to take some leniency here, knowing that time is a bit of an issue. I know that Mr. Hall, you have had your letter, which we believe just got today. Is that correct, Ms. Wilson?
I believe it was yesterday.
It was yesterday. And obviously we're at a draft stage. Mr. McClure, I'm sure there'll be some discussions going forward. The opinion here, I think that everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those in attendance wishing further information can sign the hearing attendance sheet located on the podium. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. Thank you.